Hello and welcome to Ask an NHD Alum. My name is Wendy Rex Atzett. I am the state coordinator for the National History Day program in Utah, and I'm really happy to have as our guest Natalie Lopez. Natalia she's a sophomore this year, and she started doing NHD when she was in 7th grade, and she's done a project every year, even though it's no longer required for coursework. And so this year will be her 4th year doing an NHD project. And she usually does documentaries. That's her medium. And with that very brief introduction, I will switch the screen and we'll turn it over to you, Natalia, to hear about your project.
Hello, my name is Natalie Lopez, as Wendy stated, and the documentary I did in the previous year of National History Day was the story of Sylvia Mendez and her parents' efforts to pursue litigation which would lead to the desegregation of children of color in Orange County school districts in Southern California in the 1940s, which is about 7 years prior to the desegregation case of Brown versus the Board of Education. The case of Mendez v. Westminster faced many challenges, but in the end, they did successfully bring desegregation to the entire state of California. Again, as I stated earlier, 7 years prior, before Brown v. Board of Education. The efforts of the Mendez family, together with other Latino families, were able to give children and many more a chance at a better education and future.
Okay, so Natalia, I have a lot of questions for you from students who are doing NHD and are new to the program and don't really know that much about it. And I would like to start by talking about the category that you choose. You are a documentarian. So tell me what's awesome about the documentary category, and then tell me what's really challenging about it.
I think it's awesome because I get to interview people. I love doing interviews for my projects. I've interviewed Sylvia Mendez herself, in fact, and Profesora Marisela Martinez Cola, and I thank them for allowing me to interview them. But it's one of my favorite parts, being able to interview them, and also being able to edit stuff. I can mess up as many times as I need to during my recording sessions, and no one will ever know that except for me. Yeah, editing and being able to simultaneously tell people about them and show them what was happening at the time through primary source images. And one of the most challenging things about being a documentarian is definitely the software. Software can be very iffy, and you must know how to use software properly, and I definitely recommend learning how to use the software you will be using. For example, I used iMovies for the past 3 documentaries, but recently I've started taking classes on how to learn how to do Adobe Premiere, and so I'll be doing my documentaries on Adobe Premiere from now on. And being able to operate all of the software and all of the recording and managing all of that it can be difficult, especially if something unexpected happens throughout the process. In addition to that, the topic can be kind of tricky to research. There will not always be thousands of images for you to use. So you have to be able to find images, especially primary source images, that really fit what you want them to do. You really must look for them, like 5th page of Google looking for them.
How many images would you say you need? And I know, like, if you find a historic television clip or a historic film clip, that's going to take up more time in your documentary. But as a rule of thumb, how many images do you try to find to fill a 10-minute documentary?
That really depends. Again, finding clips is also very important. That's what I make one of my first priorities, is finding video clips. And then I supplement that with images. Having only images is fine if you cannot find any video clips, but do try and keep the audience engaged. It's harder with just still images, but I don't really have an exact number for as many images as you need. I've never actually counted how many images I've needed. What I first do is try to accumulate as much as possible and have as many options. And so by pulling in like maybe 100 images, like 200 images and video clips, and then I amass that all together, and then maybe I only end up using 60 of those images and all video clips, or I supplement it with interviews as well. So it's really finding the balance of images and videos and interviews to really keep your audience engaged.
And you can show an interview in a documentary as a video clip, or if you're not able to get good video when you're interviewing somebody, you can also use an audio clip and then use other images while we're listening to the audio clip, right?
Yes, of course. I've seen people do it where they only have the audio, especially if they're doing an on-phone interview without any video. They'll add a graphic to show that the person is talking, and they'll add images at the same time, especially pertaining to what the person is talking about, or images that they may have even gotten from the person, which is something that I think is a valuable lesson, asking the people who you're interviewing for any more resources that they can provide, which has been very helpful to me.
That's a terrific idea. So what is your number one tip for students doing an NHD project, not necessarily a documentary, but just an NHD research project?
Do not be afraid of criticism. You can go to others for help. You can ask them, hey, would you listen to my speech? Would you listen to my performance? Would you look at my website? And ask them what they think of it. And do not be afraid of their criticism. Ask them to be harsh. If you can get good criticism from others, and if you can get great advice from others, especially from, again, anybody you can find, whether it be your parents, teachers, friends, that advice will really go a long way to improve the quality of your project.
That's terrific advice. What, when you start a new project, because you have to do a new project every year, what is the way that you start? What's the first thing that you do, and how do you go about doing that?
Typically, the first thing I do about the project is find another documentary on what the subject is, and then maybe I'll watch it. Other times I'll go to listen to interviews. I'll sit down and be like, okay, I need sources, I need images, and that, honestly, the sources and research is one of the first things I do. I compile articles that, even though in the long run they may not be helpful, in the beginning they'll explain to me in very simple terms what is happening and what is going on in this era and what occurred. And so after I've got some basic research done and I understand the cases and events really well, especially from different perspectives too, I sit down and make a rough draft of what I want to talk about, what I want to tell my audience. And then from there, I write my script, and yeah.
Excellent. Tell me, what led you to choose this topic?
So Mendez, I first heard about Mendez v. Westminster when my mom read me Separate is Never Equal, Sylvia Mendez and Her Family's Fight for Desegregation by Duncan Dohonahue. And I read that book around maybe when I was 7 to 8 years old. My mom read it to me. And when I was thinking about choosing a history fair topic, I remembered that that was the book she read. And that's when I heard Sylvia Mendez was coming to Utah State University to speak. And so I decided I was going to do a project and ask for an interview. And so I was able to sit down with Sylvia Mendez and interview her in the Sky Room restaurant at USU. And after that, I created my documentary.
That's so cool. That's what perfect timing that she was just coming to your town to speak and you were able to set up that interview. That shows a lot of advanced planning on your part.
Thank you.
So setting aside the interview, because we know about that now, what was the coolest primary source that you got to analyze?
Well, there was a lot of primary sources that I analyzed. And some of my favorites definitely were using the National Archives. I was able to find the actual court record case and the actual records of the court procedures in the National Archives. And I thought that was really cool to be able to look at that. In addition, there were several banks of images that I was able to find later in my research process that had a compilation of less than about 60 images from the actual time period this happened, and of the family, and of the school, and of the children, and of the people, and even the other plaintiffs whom I had not found any photos of before I found these caches of information. And also, additionally, there was several news articles with Sylvia Mendez that I had found, and I had also looked at those. Those were part of my primary initial stages of research that I was able to find.
Wow, so how did you find your way to those banks of photos, those collections of other photos? Do you remember?
I do not particularly remember how I got to them, but I do believe it was by going through, like just Googling images and then finding the images. And a lot of the images you find on Google are linked to sources where that image comes from, websites that image was originally posted on. And you were able to go to that website and see, hey, this is what that website was talking about with these images. And I believe, I don't remember which image it was specifically, but I believe I clicked on one of those images and went to the database where I found more images, and I was like, whoa, there's way more here than I would have found just by simply cursorily Googling it.
Right, so that one image was kind of like a breadcrumb that led you to a lot more, and research is like that all the time. And a lot of times you'll find good breadcrumbs in footnotes or in bibliographies of secondary.
Yes, which is why actually Wikipedia, a lot of your family and a lot of your teachers will tell you not to use Wikipedia, but actually Wikipedia can be one of your greatest secret weapons for like initial research. If you go down to the bottom of Wikipedia, they have a list of references and resources that they cited in the article, and you can go directly to those references and sources for a lot of your initial researches, or even for later research.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. How did you show multiple perspectives in your project?
Well, it was pretty tricky, especially considering a lot of the majority perspective comes from Sylvia Mendez and her family, due to Sylvia Mendez's efforts in preserving the history. But I was able to find perspectives through the court records and other sources that say this is what happening during the court proceedings. This is what other people said during the court proceedings. And I, in fact, was able to find and that's how I was able to show other people's perspectives during the court case, especially the defendants or the Westminster School, and what their opinions were on integration. And so I was able to see that again through the court records.
Excellent. And so those are primary sources that you're finding on that show both sides of that controversy, right?
Yes, essentially.
So how did you keep track of your sources and create your bibliography?
Keeping track of your sources can be kind of difficult. Before I left middle school, I used Noodle Tools specifically, but then after middle school, I lost access to it since it was a school-funded program. So from there, from the knowledge I had learned from using Noodle Tools, I opened a Google Docs, and the initial thing I did was just copy and pasted a bunch of links that led to different sources that I thought were very interesting. And then as I kept looking through sources and I kept amassing more sources, I began filtering the ones that I needed and the ones I didn't need, and I got rid of the ones I didn't need and that didn't provide ample information or just repeated what a lot of them were saying, because a lot of them are honestly very repetitive in the way that they explain things. So I got some of the most interesting ones, and a lot of the ones that were my very primary sources. And then from there, I went through the links and I found the author, the date, and essentially I just cited them through the links on the Google Doc, and that eventually became my bibliography.
That is so important that you were saving your links in that one spot, a central location from the beginning, right as you were finding sources, and then you whittled them down later. That's really, really wise. And I love that you built your system kind of based on how you did it with Noodle Tools. Oh, I see we've frozen. Let me give it a minute here. So tell us about your revision process.
Well, revising can be honestly hard. As again, I stated earlier, having other people's opinions and having them look at your project and having them look at what you're doing and asking them, hey, does this look good? Does this sound good? Does my script sound right? And having them look at it and having them be like, hey, I think you should change this and this and this, or it's not very clear what you're talking about here. Having them go through that is very good for especially getting feedback. And also listen to what your judges say. If your judges have written down on your ballot that they think you aren't being clear enough with the connection to the topic or connections to anything, or if the audio is funky, you probably should listen to them because they're seeing your project for the first time. And so they'll be able to catch what you weren't able to catch. In addition to that, honestly, just like going through and making a plan of what you need and what you know you want to fix is very important so you can keep on track. And being able to say, hey, I know the audio in this section isn't good, I'm gonna go fix it, and then going to do that. And when you're doing a documentary, it can feel like you're doing a million things at once because everything's kind of jumbled and you just gotta make sure everything fits together, kind of like a puzzle. You gotta put all those pieces together. You have to organize it by section. Currently, the industry standard in filmmaking is about a minute per hour, but don't be afraid to go over that time. Take as much time as you need, at least before the competition, and to really perfect something that you want to do. And sometimes you have to understand that there will be parts that will be mediocre and that you won't be perfect. But once you've gone through the first, maybe even second level of competition, you will be able to you will have enough criticism and enough feedback to know this is what you need to fix and this is how you can perfect it. You do have plenty of time. Please do not stress about this. I mean, unless you're doing this the night before, then feel free to stress about this. But right now, you've got plenty of time for the first level of competition. And please don't squander that time. This is a wonderful time now to be starting to work on just basic research even. You don't have to have your script written and everything edited by the end of December unless you have to, like actually have to, because I know my school did competitions at the beginning of December and you had to have everything done, but they are guiding you in that time. But know that you can do this. You will be able to get this done if you manage your time and if you manage the way you do your revisions and you do your research and your script writing. It's just all about managing and knowing what you need to do.
Excellent. And then finally, what's your favorite thing about doing NHD and how would you encourage, students who are new to doing this?
Well, I love history. I'm very much a historian at heart, and I discovered that through NHD. Like before NHD, I was very like, oh, what do I like? What am I good at? And then I discovered NHD and I was like, hey, I'm good at history. I like this. This is fun. I understand what's happening. Being able to learn about all of this and understanding the issues surrounding what sparked this. As they say, repeating history. If you know history, then it's a lot easier to catch the mistakes that you might make, and especially if you don't want to repeat history. Knowing what happened in the past can help us improve the future, and being able to learn, and again, having a passionate about your project. If you're passionate about what you're doing, and if you really love what you're doing, then, well, they say if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's the same with NHD. If you become invested, if you're doing this not just for the sake of winning, but for the sake of learning, then you're really you're gonna go far. Put learning first, because if you learn first, achievement will come with that.
That's wonderful. What lovely encouragement. I really appreciate those thoughts. So that's going to wrap it up for our time with you. And I want to just thank Natalia. And we'll sign off now.
All right. Thanks.